Ed, very good to have you on the show. You've just had your speech in the hall
a
little while ago, and part of that speech was a kind of warning to private renters about the energy efficiency of their houses. Just explain to people listening what you want to do.
Well, look, we are a government committed to tackling fuel poverty, Andrew, and one of the biggest causes of fuel poverty is private rented homes and indeed social rented homes which are below decent standards. And so what I announced today is that over the coming 5 years we will demand proper standards in the private rented sector and in the social rented sector. It will take over 1 million people out of fuel poverty, and it is part of the difference a Labour government will make. This was a policy in the private rented sector that the Conservative Party was committed to. Then a year or so ago they abandoned the policy. We think they were wrong to abandon it. We think it's right to do this. It has a side benefit of tackling emissions, but the real purpose of it is about warmer homes and lower bills for the British people.
The danger, I suppose, is that landlords will simply say this is too much extra investment and try and get rid of their properties, and the rental sector will shrink.
I don't think that's going to happen. Look, there's evidence before, when the standards were raised previously, that didn't happen. But in the end, we've got to make a judgment as a country. Do we think it's acceptable for people to live year after year with no end in sight in substandard homes, or are we going to expect of landlords, and it's important to say it is social landlords and private rented landlords, decent standards? Now, I think that is part of a civilised society, and it shows something quite important, I think, about where the priorities of this Labour government lie.
Ed, I'm sure you were listening to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, as I was.
I thought it was an excellent speech.
And you heard her talk about investment in a way that I found slightly new. Do you think this is an indication that we are going to see more news on investment by the budget?
I was amused by you saying, is the Treasury going to take over the entire government? Because the history of sort of Britain is that the Treasury does tend to run the government. I once worked for Gordon Brown, and I think you can accuse Gordon Brown of many things, but not seeking to run the entire government is not one of them, if you see what I mean. Look, I think this is really important what Rachel is saying, which is Gordon used to have this old phrase, prudence for a purpose. And I think what she was signalling very clearly in her speech today was, yes, times are tough. Yes, I'm having to make difficult decisions, but this is for a purpose. And her signal on capital investment, what we call capital investment, so public investment in the future of our economy, in things like new industries in my area, like carbon capture and storage, like supply chains for offshore wind, good manufacturing jobs, I think that was a really important signal. And I hadn't heard a Chancellor, frankly, Labour or Conservative, say it in quite that way before, and I think it was really important.
Well, I called it a broad hint, and I think it was. So basically, she's planted her tanks on your lawn, but you quite like the view.
Well, not at all. Look, I think one of the important things about this is when I think about what we call the clean energy mission, so advancing to clean power by 2030 and to net zero across the economy, this is an agenda embraced by Keir and Rachel in equal measure to me, because they see it as the route not just to tackling the climate crisis, important though that is, but as the route to energy security, to lower bills, and crucially, Andrew, to good jobs and growth. Clean energy is the economic opportunity of the 21st century. Unless we have public investment, unless we have initiatives like Great British Energy, it won't happen. It didn't happen under the Tories. We didn't get the jobs here. We're determined to change that.
Well, let me turn directly to that, because that is at the centre of everything you're doing.
Sure.
The Tories, as you know, say that by extending the years from 2035, which was their target, to 2040, and you're 5 years away now. They say by cutting 5 years off that, what you've done is made it inevitable that Britain will rush to Chinese products, particularly solar panels and rare earth minerals and other things, and that therefore less will be made in Britain than would otherwise have been the case.
I laugh, Andrew, with sort of bitter irony, because what's happened over 14 years of the Tories is that the jobs went elsewhere. If you look at Denmark, for example, it has 4 times more renewable jobs per capita than Britain. We didn't get the jobs here. Now, what we're going to do is deliver clean power by 2030, because that is crucial for energy security. Otherwise, we are hot to the petrostates and dictators, and we get things like the cost of living crisis we had. But we're also going to do something the Tories never did, which is invest in the supply chains in this country. So if you take Great British Energy, if you take the National Wealth Fund, two really important initiatives. It's about recognising what governments around the world are doing, which is public investment to lever in private investment and deliver the supply chains. It's absolute nonsense, this. They left us exposed to having no supply chains in Britain.
And they are investment vehicles rather than actual generation companies, of course.
Well, no, Great British Energy is a generation company. No, the National Wealth Fund is an investment vehicle.
But so is Great British Energy.
No. Great British Energy will own and run. It will own and run. It's really important to say this. It's a developer like a company like Ørsted. So take, for example, floating offshore wind. It will not just invest in it, but it will own a share of it, and it will run our energy. Running our energy system. Yeah.
So these are big changes that you want to make. Your critics say that they're admirable and worthwhile, but 5 years is too quick. It's simply, in terms of the concrete, the steel, and all of that, it cannot be done.
They're absolutely wrong. And what's so interesting about this is, in 11 weeks, we have, or 7 weeks, sorry, is it? No, it's 11. How many weeks is it now? 11 weeks,
it's more or less 100
11
days,
weeks,
isn't it?
Yeah. A bit less than 100 days. 11 weeks. We have galvanised industry in a way that never happened under the Tories. Why? Because we've shown we're not just got a mission, but we are in a hurry to deliver it. Lifting the onshore wind ban, consenting more solar power, Andrew, in 2.5 months than the Tories did in 14 years, and having the most successful renewable auction in British history, and setting up a Great British Energy. And what I'm finding, and I talk to industry a lot about this, is they're saying, finally, we've got a government with actually a sense of mission on this stuff.
Well, let me ask you about one other aspect of your mission, which is, I think on your table is a proposal to give £5 billion of taxpayers' money to Sizewell C. Now, Sizewell C won't be finished until 2040, won't be part of the grid until 2040 or after that, which is 5 years after you think you will have decarbonised the energy grid. When money is tight, is that really a sensible thing to do?
New nuclear is important, Andrew, and our manifesto committed to advancing projects like Sizewell. Look, the truth about this is that we're going to have a mainly renewables-based system. But nuclear provides a really, really important base load for the system. And the truth is that lots of our nuclear power stations are having to retire. They're having to close.
They're too old,
because they're too old. And so what we're talking about is replacing at least some of that with things like Sizewell and small modular reactors. The thing I always say about this is, given the scale of demand on our electricity system in the future, you don't get to pick and choose. You need all of these things. You need offshore wind and onshore wind and solar and nuclear and hydrogen and carbon capture. You need all. We've got a once in 200 years investment in our energy system that we need to do, and so nuclear is absolutely part of it.
And I can hear the enthusiasm and energy in your voice when you talk about that. But you know very well that the run-up to this conference has not been what the Labour Party would have wanted. Gordon Brown, for whom you work, I'm sure bought all his own clothes, and they rather looked like that. I think you're wearing your own clothes. How did the government, so committed to high values and service, end up in this place?
Look, I've known Keir a long time. And I'm really proud that he came into politics when I was leader. This is somebody who's in politics so much for the right reasons. I mean, we've talked so much about this in the last week. I mean, I think what people want to know is what are we doing for their lives.
But this has been a complete Horlicks politically. It's been a real mess, and you must feel disappointed too.
Of course, it's a distraction. But look, the truth is that you've got. I'm old enough and ugly enough, Andrew. I've been in politics a long time. You've got to keep your eyes on the prize. You've got to keep your eyes on what the British people actually want to see, which is, are we going to change their lives? That's what matters. And when the next election is decided, I kind of would humbly suggest that what people will be saying is, have you created good jobs? Are you sorting out the health service? Are you advancing towards clean power? That they're not going to be talking about Keir's clothes.
Ed, I'm older than you, and I'm a great deal uglier than you are too. So I can ask you, did you ever have clothes bought for you when you were leader?
No, I didn't. But
all right.
But look. I'm not going to make judgments about this. Let's. The reason I'm pausing for a second.
Okay.
No. I just want to say this point is that I have met very few people in politics who are more in it for the right reasons than Keir Starmer. And so let's move on.
Given that,
.org, really.
Given that, final question, because it has been a real political mess, if nothing else, don't you think that Keir Starmer should say sorry tomorrow?
No, I think Keir Starmer should talk about his vision for the country. And honestly, I think what he's got to do, and he will do this, is talk about the hope that a Labour government can bring. Yes, it's tough times, but as I said in my speech today, tough times for Labour, given that the tough times are facing the British people, means we raise our ambition for how we change the country, not lower it. And I think that's what you're going to hear from Keir tomorrow. And
final thing on Rachel's speech. You mentioned the Gordon Brown comparison, I think, and there were Gordon Brown comparisons, but there is a Margaret Thatcher one there too, isn't there now?
I think Rachel is her own person, and I think I'm not going to make it about Thatcher. Look, Rachel is a dear friend of mine. I put her on the front bench.
She rather likes the comparison, I think.
One of the best decisions I made. She is a mould breaker in her own right, the first female Chancellor for 800 years.
All right, Ed Miliband, thank you very much for coming on and talking to us tonight.